Welcome to a new episode of Mind Your Mind. I am Roxana Parra Sepúlveda, your host, and today my guest is Barbara Houseman. She has worked in theater for over 40 years, both as a voice and acting coach and as a theater director. She spent 6 years in the world-renowned voice department at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then a year as associate director at the Young Vic. She also spent 14 years coaching communication skills in the public and private sector alongside her theater work. She now works freelance coaching individual actors, including Daniel Radcliffe and Jude, and working on shows including The Ferryman, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time, and Donmar, all-female trilogy. Between 2014 and 2022, she was associate director at Open Air Theatre in Regent's Park. She is the author of Finding Your Voice and Tackling Text and Subtext, both published by Nick Hern Books. Barbara has trained as a Healing Shiatsu Practitioner, a NLP and clean language coach, and mindfulness facilitator, as well as Solignment Breath facilitator. And today we will be focusing mostly in the work that she has been doing around Solignment Breath facilitator, but obviously she will be bringing all her wisdom and knowledge of her more than 40 years of career. So Barbara, thank you for being here with us today. I'm really looking forward for today because we will be talking about lots of different aspects of the Solignment Breath work that you do and the role of coping mechanisms and so on. So yeah, so shall we get started? Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Solignment Breath work and what is that about?
Well, hello, and I'm really happy to be here. Right, the Solignment breath work is, actually breath is only a very, very small part of it. I'll talk about that first. So the idea with the breath work is that there's a breath that is completely released on the out breath. There's no control. It's just complete surrender. And in a Solignment breath work session, most of the time you're allowing the breath to take care of itself and encouraging this very relaxed breath. And then there's a certain stage that is more activated, where you have a deep, deep, deep in breath, and then this surrender out breath. But even within this stage, the other pillars within Solignment work are in place, and those pillars are relaxation and allowing. So it's these three pillars of breath, relaxation, and allowing, so that the breath work is never forced. Mm-hmm. It's a very gentle process in that respect.
And what is this used for?
The idea of both the Solignment breath work, and then there's also Solignment embodiment work, is to reprogram the subconscious and rewire the nervous system. So my teacher, Julia Mick, talks about blueprint and imprint. And the thing I love about the Solignment method is that it starts from the basis that we are all whole. We are not wounded, that underneath there is this blueprint, and that the things that have happened to us in our lives that may have caused stress and less helpful habits are imprints on top of the blueprint, which for me, it's rather like seeing the blueprint as the blue sky.
Yes.
And the imprints as the clouds. And this process helps, works very much the physical level. So below the level of thoughts and emotions, it's working with sensations. So it's unwinding at the physical level of old fears, habits, self-sabotaging patterns, limiting beliefs. So it's unwinding them at the physical level rather than working with the emotional or the mental cognitive levels.
So it's much deeper in the sense that one is working at a subconscious level. So definitely that brings us into the felt experience more than the staying in your mind and staying in your thoughts or ideas and beliefs. Is going much, much deeper is what I'm hearing from what you're saying.
Yes.
Huh?
And actually really going to sensations and being very and a great sense of allowing, of welcoming all sensations. So it has some relationship to mindfulness in that respect, that you're really allowing all sensations to be there, and as much as is possible, letting go of agenda. So you're not even going, if I allow this feeling, it will go. You're really wanting to allow. The idea is that if you allow everything, any unwinding that needs to happen at an energetic level will happen. The wisdom of the body will do that.
Exactly. And let's not forget as well that we know that is our body the one that is like a time capsule, I would say, with regards to our experiences, and that most of our memories are also deeply related to a felt experience. No, what happens to us and the experiences that we live, the work that we do, and the things that we witness at work, for example, and so on, the situations that we are in. Will then have this component of a felt experience, but there is so much distinction and so much difference between body and mind and we tend to lose sight sometimes that the mind is part of the body. and that we are experiencing things at a embody level in the body.
Yes, and I think the thing that I know my teacher's been explaining for me, because obviously as we're training, we're going through this process ourselves to release our imprints, is that when a situation, external situation in the present triggers a memory, the felt sense that comes up is present in the body now.
Yes.
So it could be that it's the feeling we had when we were 3 of being abandoned. But because it's in the present, because it's felt in the body in the present now, it's very hard for us to go, this is a feeling from the past. It feels like it's a feeling about the event that's happening now. And that's why events in the present, our reaction to them is not just about our reaction in the present, our adult self. There's often a lot of intense reaction from the past, which gets entangled with thoughts and feelings from now, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And what you're saying makes me think about the role of coping mechanisms and how we from early age we develop ways of dealing with life, no?
Yes.
And that then becomes somehow our default. So it will be quite automatic sometimes. The way that we may react to all the things that may trigger us is an automatic reaction. It's not something that we need to think about. It's just happen because we get used to use those coping mechanisms, those ways of reacting to certain situations, and whatever the situations that we are living at the moment. And let's not forget that we are thinking here about all our frontline workers working in different settings and in different cities around the world as well. By the way, we are in London. Where are you based, Barbara?
Well, I will be based in London shortly. At the moment, I'm still in Yorkshire, but I will be back in London soon.
Okay. So, yeah, we're thinking internationally here, no? And all our frontline workers that are in different settings, and dealing with different situations. But it sounds important to me to say that the coping mechanisms that any of us develop, that each of us develop throughout life, will be also activated through the situations that we live at work.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and so it sounds to me that then we need to be thinking about that a starting point to develop a self-care plan, no? And what will be the role of coping mechanisms or coping methods that you will see? What will be the first step?
Well, I think one thing over time is looking at what are the things that trigger us in the present. And taking time to think whether they actually connect to experiences that we have in the past. And the good news is that if we go back and deal with the earliest example, that all the others fall over like dominoes. It's not like you have to. So that, I mean, that's work that you're probably going to need some help with maybe need some help with some support to go back to the youngest event and maybe mentor that younger self. Let me perhaps not give you an example from my trying to think. Yes, of an example that would be good. Okay. My mother was very mentally ill when I was young and actually went into a mental hospital for quite a period of time. And I think my very young self came to the conclusion that I was too much. Because, you know, a very young child, pre-verbal, doesn't know their mother's ill. So obviously I can be in situations of an adult where maybe people go or something happens where I will go, oh, I'm too much. But by going back and talking to that young self, I mean, you can deal with it somatically, but I'm obviously not able. That by giving that child a perspective that it was not their fault, that it actually had nothing to do with them, that the parent went, can remove this belief that they're too much, which then might trigger in later situations.
Yes.
So that's one thing you can do. But the other thing I think that is very, very useful, which was an exercise that we did in my mindfulness training to evaluate stresses in your life, is you take a day in your life and you write down all the activities in that day.
Yes.
And then you put next to them which ones were nourishing, which ones were neutral, and which ones were depleting. Because obviously all the ones that were nourishing, you don't have to look after. They're nourishing you. So then you take the depleting ones and you go, can I get rid of any of these? But maybe you can't. Say traveling to work is depleting. What could you do to make it more nourishing? Do you enjoy reading? Could you read? Are you driving? Could you listen to a podcast or some music? So you're looking at how you can change what you can do with the depleting activities to make them either pleasurable. The two things is a pleasurable or a sense of mastery. So answering one's emails is never going to be pleasurable.
No.
There may be a sense of mastery after you've done it.
Yes.
And I know one of the things, I was working with some nurse managers and some nurses on all of this. And one of the things that they switched from was that they were never going to get through the list of things that they needed to do in the day.
The thing to do, right? Yes.
So if they looked at that list, there was going to be continual sense of failure. But if one could shift that and look at all the things that have been achieved in the day, then one could move from a sense of failure to a sense of success. So when you're dealing with the depletion, you're looking at, well, how can I remove this activity? No, I can't. So how do I make it either pleasurable or a sense of mastery? So I think that's the first thing to do, so that you can take as much because in a way, dealing with stress, depletes us, and the depletion leads to fatigue, and
absolutely, yes,
and that leads to maybe depression or anxiety or collapse. So I think that's the first thing that one can do.
Absolutely. And that's also starting from understanding what your day is looking like, no? And what are those situations that are depleting, as you say, which is is identifying and understanding your stressors. And that's something that we have been talking about here as a fundamental starting point, because what is stressful for you won't be for me. But what I'm hearing as well from what you're saying is the importance of changing the viewpoint. No, you are giving us an alternative to look at the situation in a slightly different way. When we have that persistently long long list of to-do, no, that to-do list that never goes really towards the bottom, is to also have that list of the things that you did, but also get the idea on how you can change the perspective, and how can you add something to those things that you have to do, because you cannot change them, but you probably can add an ingredient that will make them more nourishing, will make them more positive in a way, no?
Yes, I think that it's so that if I can't actually change what I'm doing, can I change my attitude to what I'm doing?
Yes.
Yes. And some of that's, you know, sometimes that's, I mean, this is an example that's kind of outside this, well, not necessarily outside the self-care area, but, you know, maybe somebody hates doing the washing up. But what if you go, well, what if I approach this from a sensation point of view? Is it quite pleasant putting my hands into warm water? Is there a way I can enjoy the movement of the circular movement of wiping a plate? I mean, I know that sounds, but it's like, actually, can I break tasks down?
Absolutely.
To the sensation level, because there's nothing, you know, it's interesting what you said about, you know, not everyone's stressed by the same thing, not everyone enjoys or dislikes the same thing. So actually, can we, you know, how much is the actual activity stressing us, and how much is our attitude to the activity stressing us?
Yes, and I'm smiling when you're talking about this, because when I do the washing up, I take it as I am playing with water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you make me smile and make me think about this. And actually is what I do, you know. No, it's okay. And so many times, if I am with friends or there is someone else that could do it and offers, and my answer normally is no, don't worry, I'm playing with water here, so I'm fine. You know, it's like, I can do it. And it's something, yeah, you're making me realize actually that is something about how do we approach the situation that can also create a slightly shift in terms of our levels of stress and how are we feeling, no?
Yes, I think so. And it's about, you know, because they say, don't they, you know, this thing about how am I feeling and how am I feeling about how I'm feeling, and it's the feeling about how I'm feeling that is the issue. And I think also that oh my goodness, I've forgotten his name all suddenly, it'll come back to me, the neuroscientist who talks about, you know, what we resist persists. So if we're in resistance to a task, then all our energy is going into resisting it and into not liking it. And this is where going back to the pillars of this alignment is so important. You know, this relaxation, allowing, breath work, because often people, when they're trying to relax, are not accepting the situation. They're trying to force relaxation onto a situation, or they're trying to force breathing deeply, you know, breathing. Whereas actually the first pillar, and this is true in mindfulness as well, is allowing. Can I first of all accept this situation? Can I accept? And accept is not, I think, well, actually allow is a better word than accept, because accept can mean, oh, I'm just accepting that this situation is really bad and over stressful. I'm not, you know, I'm not asking
it's slightly more hopeless
to change it. No? Whereas allowing is actually, let me stop wasting my own precious energy on resisting it.
Yes.
I then might spend that energy talking to my boss about the fact that this is totally impossible and I shouldn't be doing this. But I'm not wasting enormous energy resisting what's already happening. You know, Eckhart Tolle talks about, if you're in the middle of a traffic jam, being angry about being in the middle of a traffic jam, doesn't make any difference to the traffic jam. It just means you are less happy.
Yeah.
So I think the first stage is, can I accept, yeah, this is overwhelming. Yeah, there's too much work. Yes, this is stressful. Not because I should go on accepting it, but because it releases a whole load of energy for self-care.
And you're making me think as well about the amount of energy that we may put in bottling down sensations, emotions, and so on, not keeping it, as much as, bottled down, like with a big cover up, so we don't allow ourselves to feel it, to go through it, the sensations, to go through wherever is happening to us, no? And that's understandable as well, because sometimes it might be quite scary. And also, naturally, our system will be reacting in a way of fight or flight. So it will be, all the alarm system will be on, and it will be more difficult sometimes be in an accepting mode over there in that very moment. But on reflection, probably afterwards as well, is the moment in, and I think you have touched on a very important point, that is about having either the connection with a professional or being in safe spaces, for example, reflective spaces with your peers, in which you can acknowledge. I think also the word here is acknowledgement of how this feels, how X situation is making me feel, and therefore respond. No?
Yes, and I think that's really, really important, the acknowledgement of this is stressful. But actually, I think apparently the amygdala calms a lot of the, that when the amygdala is sending, which we stores emotional memories, etc. When the amygdala is sending signals, fear signals or anxiety or anger, often apparently there's some research that suggests that if you acknowledge it, if you go, yes, I'm scared, or yes, I'm overwhelmed, that the amygdala will calm down, because it goes, okay, you got the message.
Yes.
And I know I certainly had a client who'd had both physical and emotional trauma in her past. She was an acting client. I'm not a therapist. I work therapeutically, but I'm not a therapist. But she couldn't stay on her own without getting a panic attack. And when we delved into it, because she did want to stay on her own, what we realized was she was ignoring the fear she felt. So the fear just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I mean, I'm not saying that's always what happens with panic attacks. It was just in this specific case. But certainly one of the things that I think is true, that the body is sending the signals for a good reason.
Yes.
And if we ignore even just acknowledgement, I think that's such a good word. This is really stressful. Yes. I am feeling really overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I think that's excellent. I think what doesn't help is when we do what I call spaghettiing or knitting.
Okay.
Is where we have this feeling in our body. The feeling, the feeling in the body leads to emotions. The emotion then leads to mental, and then we add story. We go, and this is what's happening, and I can't do this. This will be, and this is going to be what the rest of my life is, and I'll have to find a new job, and I can't find a new job. So, and then and Eckhart Tolle talks about this, that then sensation gives rise to the feelings and the thoughts, and then feeds off the feelings and the thoughts. So it all gets worse.
Yes.
And so it's like, if once you've acknowledged how you're feeling, one can stop. This has been the really mind-blowing thing for me in the Solignment work. If one can stop engaging with the thoughts, the story, and even the emotions, and actually go to the sensations in the body and sit with those sensations in the body, just sit with how the body is feeling. And just by giving that attention, it's rather like giving a child who's upset attention. You're giving, you're going back to the base. And you're not trying to change it. You're not trying to, you're just saying there's tightness in my chest. It's okay. And it's welcome. The tightness in my chest is welcome. And I know that sounds crazy, but actually that tightness is an expression of how we're feeling and needs to be felt.
Yes.
And then we don't get the bottling up that you talk about.
Yes, and it's in a way, we are validating what is happening, and we are not shaming or shoot ourselves into something else, but just accepting that the way that we feel has to do with who we are as well,
Yes.
no, and our natural reactions to sometimes very abnormal circumstances.
Yeah, and that maybe we need that holding. And I think there's something very important you said about peers and other people, that although we know that if a child has been well co-regulated by their mother and by other adults as they're growing up, that they will be better at self-regulation, that we continue to need co-regulation.
Absolutely.
We cannot do this by ourselves. And that being with somebody else who can acknowledge how we're feeling and how we can talk it through with, or they can just sit with us while we perhaps breathe and stay with the body level. But co-regulation is incredibly important.
Yeah.
To us. And if you're a care worker and taking on a huge amount from the people you're working with, that having that co-regulation where you are supported. And it doesn't always, I think, have to be talking about the problem. Sometimes it's go have coffee with a friend, or go bowling, or just go have fun, you know, because that social connection and co-regulation just de-stresses us and puts things back into perspective, I think.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a walk around the block.
Yes.
Just a little break, or a cup of tea, or a breathing exercise together.
Yes, yes.
No, but we're touching here in that relational aspect that sometimes it easily cannot be about taking care of the needs of the other, but this is another state of being relating, which is for us to be together and through enjoyment and through, you know, being in a sort of safe environment, something that makes us feel calm and secure and having fun and distracted and have a laugh, for example. All of that will help us to regulate the intensity of those sensations, emotions in front of certain particular circumstances. No, I recently saw a program that was talking on how breathing exercises for first responders was such a good experience, and they were having moments after the day. At the end of the day, they will do a breathing exercise all together in a circle, and just sharing that moment will really change. And they were measuring the biological signs and how they were responded, and the intensity of the beats of their hearts, and which went really, really low and in a much calmer space just by doing that.
Was that coherent breathing? You know what they were?
I don't know what was the technique they were using in particular, but I think it was more like just a breathing exercise that was combined with meditation.
Because there is, and you can get apps for this. I think there's quite a few apps, and there's something on YouTube as well. Coherent breathing is
okay.
They've done research into this, and that it's called coherent because it creates a coherency with the heart. And I mean, obviously, I can, if you would find more detail on the internet about
I'll
this.
find it. Yeah, I'll look for it. Yeah, thank you.
But basically, breathing in for about 5.56 seconds and breathing out the same amount. So the in-breath and the out-breath are the same length, is meant to have this effect that you're talking about. It can lower heart rate. It brings everything in the body back into coherence. And as I say, you can find apps if you which I've got a little app I think called Breathe, and you can set it and it has a sound, or you can watch a picture and you breathe, and so you can watch it, so you can actually breathe in and out for that amount of time, and that is very useful, because one of the things we know is the in-breath stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight-flight system, and the out-breath stimulates our parasympathetic system. So yes, breathing out for longer than we breathe in can be useful. And this balanced breath, where we're balancing the in-breath and the out-breath, to bring it into balance and coherence is very useful. Also, pranayama breathing from yoga, where you breathe in through one nostril and out through the other nostril, and then in through that nostril and out, is also balancing, again, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So yes, I mean, certainly doing breathing exercises can be very useful. What's important is that the breath is very relaxed. I know when I was first doing breath exercises within meditation, that I ended up trying to control my breath a lot rather than. So it's how much can you surrender, how much can the body relax to the breathing. And I think it's very important not to have an aim, not to do the breathing in order to relax. One has to let go of the agenda and just do it, which can be hard, I know, but
yeah. No, but it's interesting because sometimes, and again, no, I think we are talking about the stressors and how much sometimes to have the agenda, to have that goal of I have to be, or I should feel relaxed, or I have to be in a better shape, or whatever we are saying to ourselves with that agenda, stop us from being present sometimes, no? And connecting with ourselves.
I think that's very true. And I think one thing, I know it's not easy, but my teacher talks about that the peace in the end is being peaceful with what is. And obviously I need to be careful because I'm not, you know, there's injustice in the world and there's unfairness. And I don't think anyone is suggesting we should accept that. But yes, I think we're talking on a day-to-day, if I can be peaceful. You know, I mean, people dealing with chronic pain have to, you know, in a way, one of the things they work is with mindfulness to kind of accept the pain and maybe then put their attention somewhere else in the body that isn't painful. So peacefulness is how much can I be in allowance of what is already here, because it's too late for me to change what's already happening. And if I can be in a peace with that, and instead of resistance and fight, that might lower my stress levels. So we're saving our energy for fights that actually might achieve something, as opposed to fighting what already is present.
Yes, and I think what we're talking about in a way is it's a slightly different approach to life, in the way that we are normally working towards something. There is always a deadline, obviously, for first responders or anybody in the front line when there is a situation to be working with, or a client or a service user to support. There is a clear agenda, there are clear goals. But I think we are focusing today in all those tools that will help in the after the situation, no?
Because I think the thing is that actually when people are in that, especially first responders are in that situation, they are very present.
They have to be, yes.
Yeah, and actually in that respect, their worries about, you know, anything else in their life disappear.
Exactly.
I think the issue is, you know, that the body has probably had to be on very high alert. So they've been, you know, the sympathetic, the mobilization system has been appropriately alerted. However, if there isn't some kind of breathing or stretching or some kind of release from that situation, I think, you know, people can get stuck in the sympathetic mode. It's almost like they're on permanent their body is on permanent 999 alert.
Yes.
And it also, I think, as you say, that there could be a bottling up in the situation of their own personal reaction to a situation that then doesn't get processed afterwards.
Exactly. And it's about that, no? Because in the end, to get to understand all of this is what will give us the tools and the material to process.
Yes.
To process our past, to process and understand ourselves as best as we can in the present, in a way that then we will be able to use that wisdom to manage and create that support that support system or create that self-care plan that we are thinking about today. No, it's about that.
Yes, I think so. And about going, you know, what do I need? And it's very personal. Do I need a run? Do I need to go for a run or go to the gym? Or do I need to physically work out, however tired I feel, to release some of the pent-up energy? You know, do I need to walk home walk a little bit of the way home rather than getting on public transport to give myself a bit of space? And I know this is difficult because this is all time. And often people feel very time poor. And I think one of the things people do when they get tired is go, I need to go to bed. I can't go out and see anyone. Where actually going out and seeing people or having something social might be very nourishing in the way that just going to sleep or sitting on the sofa in front of the television, although it feels like the only thing that you can do. So I mean, I think it's very important that there's no oughts or should and certainly no judgment, but it's saying what would really support me in this time. And I think a lot of people who are first responders and in the caring roles are very good at caring for others, but not always so good. And I mean, includes for myself in that, even though my role was different, at allowing other people to support us or in asking for help.
Yes.
Because I think there is often people who go into care that there's been maybe back in one's youth, there's been a lot of praise for being helpful. One may, you know, one's personality may be very much orientated that way, that one gets a lot of joy from helping and supporting others. And we also need to be supported.
Absolutely. And that's the positivity of understanding what were those relational patterns that we were growing up in, no? And how easy as well sometimes depends, no? Because obviously helping others is super positive and is a good thing to do. But also there is the difference between helping someone based on what they need instead of what we need. No?
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. Because I mean, can't we focus on helping others in order to bury our own emotional discomfort?
Absolutely.
And we can stay busy, busy, because then we don't have to sit with ourselves. So yes.
Exactly.
Or if we feel our value comes from supporting others, and that we feel guilty taking time for ourselves. You know, we may have felt that we received a message as a child that to focus on oneself and self-care was actually selfish.
Yes. Selfish, and therefore, yes. And that's the very message of this podcast, and this is something that I normally repeat. No, that's why the hashtag of this podcast is selfish is kind.
Yes,
because there is this minimum, you know, this amount of selfishness that is essential for us to be able to do what we want to do.
And you think about it. I mean, what do they say on the plane? Put your mask on to help out others. What do you do if you're going to rescue somebody in the water? You put your life jacket on. Why? Because if you burn out, you're of no help to anyone.
Absolutely.
And the model I love, which you get in a lot of mindfulness, which is certainly the one that we follow in Solignment, is that the self-care comes first. And when you're overflowing with health and love and everything, that just then flows out onto other people. That you give from a place of fullness and not a place of emptiness.
Fantastic. I love that. Give from a place of fullness and not from a place of emptiness.
Yeah, because otherwise what happens is we see it all the time. People burn out and they leave.
Yeah, that's why there is always a persistent rotation. No, and that's something we see a lot in charity organizations and everywhere, really, with this persistent rotation of and that leads to understaffing.
Yes, exactly.
No? Yeah.
And you know, and I mean, certainly, I do think there are real issues that do need to be addressed about people not being asked, not having long enough breaks.
Yes,
etc. I'm not denying all of that, but
absolutely.
What we're looking at here is there's nothing we can do about that,
Yeah.
How can we help people to help themselves? And I know
Yes.
when I was working with these nurse managers, we were looking at, you know, how long they thought they could, you know, take a break and do a breathing exercise for, and we came down to 30 seconds, basically, was about, but, you know, that maybe while you were on the loo, you could do it. But actually, even that, I remember one of the nurse managers saying to me, oh my goodness, I feel like I've had an internal shower. I feel like just that 30 seconds. And it is something that perhaps we can even do at some point in this in this session.
Yeah, I would love to
do that. That actually just by being, and it is back to what you said about being present for a moment, and it's giving yourself a holiday, giving yourself mini vacations
throughout the day.
Yeah.
Before we go into the exercise, is there any other element that could play a part as a pillar for a self-care strategy, do you think? We have touched on several, but is there anything else that we should be touching on?
I mean, I think I hate to say this, the old things about diet and exercise, but
yes,
of course,
yes,
but they do make a difference. I do think really evaluating stressors and evaluating how much of this stress is external and how much of the stress is caused by my reaction to this.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm thinking of something, I'm just trying to think something, you know, because, for example, if we're having to be evaluated in some way, a lot of the stress from the evaluation is not the evaluation, but our own fear and worry and everything about the evaluation. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, evaluations cannot be handled very well. There was that example of that headmistress recently. So I really don't want, you know, where it looks like maybe things could have been more sensitively handled. But I think also, you know, depending on our past, sometimes it's inner stress that we're piling onto this situation rather than external stress. And that's sometimes hard to separate. But I think sometimes sitting down and looking at where's this stress coming from? How much stress is coming from the situation or my manager or externally? And how much stress am I adding? Because I'm telling myself stories about what happens if I don't do this, or in the past I failed. You know, I think that is one thing, and looking at, well, how much could be de-stress could be if I changed my attitude. Yes. This is not, I don't know if this example is useful, but it's one from just something of changing attitude in my own life. I've just started directing shows again, and I gave up years ago because I totally lacked confidence. I thought I wasn't any good.
And that's in the theatrical setting, right?
In a theatrical setting.
Yes.
And so I got to the end of the first week of rehearsals. We'd had a very, very good week. And then we went in on the Monday of the next week, and we were moving to the next stage, so it was harder. So all my own thoughts, my own negativity came back about how much I wasn't able to do the job and I wasn't good, etc. And I stopped and I thought, I have a choice. I can focus on these limiting beliefs that really take hold and ruin me, or I can focus on what I want to achieve. So it's not like I was denying, I just moved my focus. So I moved my focus from whether I was good or not to what I wanted to enable the cast I was working with to do. So I shifted from a debate about whether I was good enough to my intention. Yes. And that released me. And I realized 5 weeks later that my intention was entirely achieved.
Fantastic.
Without me consciously, I just got on and did the work. But what had happened was, because I was no longer fighting this negativity towards myself, because I just stopped worrying about whether I was any good or not.
Yes, and the example
I just focused on what I wanted to achieve.
Exactly, and that's the very example that you're giving. Is it brings the question that I persistently ask: what can happen? And you just answer the question with your example. What will happen if we focus on what we want to achieve instead of avoiding what we don't want to feel,
Yes.
think, etc. No,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's the core of what we are talking about today, that very shift, the understanding between what it is, the inner stressors and external stressors, and when these two somehow get together in that place of, I always talk about fear liking a lot fantasy,
Yes.
and fear feeds from fantasies that can go in all sorts of ways, and imagination can go very dark, and if we are from a place of fear, no, and normally stress and anxiety take us into a place of fear.
Absolutely. And I think, and then we have a long memory, don't we, of all the times we've fucked up.
Yes.
And sorry, I shouldn't use the word, but all the times we've mucked up, all the times we've made mistakes. You know, we have this, you know, there's a long memory, and it's very easy to catastrophize taking our
Yes.
past into the future.
Absolutely.
And to stress ourselves with things that are never going to happen.
And even but they are part of our fantasies. No?
Yes, and even if they are, you know, it's like, you know, this whole idea of, oh, don't get too excited about that happens because you'll be disappointed when it happens. It's like you're going to be disappointed anyway, so you might as well be excited and positive. And then yeah, it's like we worry because we think if we worry, when we get to that worry that somehow if something happens it'll hurt less, and it's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
All you have is less resource.
And also, in the end, if we think about things in a positive way, that also is programming us to focus on those positive things that we are, you know, the positivity and the signs that actually we are achieving what we want, because it's almost like you're putting a filter in your eyes, no?
Absolutely.
In the way that you will be looking at, because our brain needs the consistency, so it will pay attention naturally, subconsciously. We will be paying attention to all those elements in any situation that will confirm that idea that, for example, this will not work, or I'm not good enough, or etc. No, and that's why that conscious decision that you were talking about, not that very exercise of the conscious decision to say, hang on a minute, I will purposely focus on my purpose, for example, on the positive outcome or the outcome that I want from this situation, and work towards that. Use your energy towards that. That can also help a lot, greatly to reduce your stress. Shall we then, since we are getting towards the end of today's program, can we go then to that little exercise that you mentioned that you would like to share?
Yes. One of the things, just before we do that, I remember the name of the person who said what resists persists, and I want to share something else. It's Rick Hanson. Who's a neuroscientist and mindfulness coach, and he talks about that we are evolutionarily set up to remember negative experience. So negative experience goes straight in to be stored. Positive experience does not. And I think this is the same thing that also Stephen Porges has found, who talked about polyvagal theory.
Yes.
And Deb Dana, who's worked with him, talks about this, about you need to savor positive experiences. So at the end of the day, or the end of a shift, or the end of whenever, if we don't take a moment to focus on the positive, what we will remember is the negative, because the negative will be automatically stored. And I found myself the weekend, you had a huge amount of positive feedback from so many people I was working with on this project. And two people, they hadn't said negative feedback, they just hadn't gone well done. And what was I focused on? These two people, as opposed to the enormous number of people who'd said positive things. And I suddenly thought, this makes you miserable. Or you could remember all the people who said the good things instead, and then you would be in a much better place.
Absolutely.
So we need to take time, and I think Rick Hanson says 30 seconds about So that actually at the end of a shift, or even the end of every hour or whenever, just remembering anything good, a smile from somebody, a thank you, something you felt good enough about, just spending 30 seconds. And as you were saying, about your mind then begins to turn and it starts to build this habit of remembering good things.
Good.
And that's what gratitude practice is really about. I resisted it. I don't want to be grateful. But gratitude practice isn't about you being grateful to somebody else. It's about when you remember all the good things, your brain is balanced from remembering the negative things into remembering the good things. And suddenly you're happier, because if you're remembering the good things in the day rather than the bad things in the day, you've had a better day.
Yes, and they connect you with that sensation. We go back to where we're talking at the very beginning, that has to do with that felt experience.
Yes.
And by remembering them, you're stimulating within yourself that felt experience of this felt good.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what we are talking about. Fantastic. I love this work. Thank you so much, Barbara. So many interesting things.
So shall we do the
then
exercise?
That call for action, so that we always do at the end of an episode. So all yours. The space is all yours.
So so this process could be done for 30 seconds, or it could be done for longer. Okay, so the first thing is bring your attention to yourself, noticing any thoughts which are present, any emotions which are present, and any physical sensations that are present. And the first thing is to allow them to be here. And if you have resistance to a thought or an emotion or a physical sensation, then just allow the resistance. So you're welcoming everything that's here. If there's a headache, you welcome it. If there's resistance to welcoming it, you welcome the resistance. If the mind is busy, you welcome it. If there's resistance to the busyness, you welcome that. If there's sadness or anxiety, can you welcome them? And if there's resistance to welcoming them, can you welcome the resistance? Just moving into a space of allowing what is, of welcoming what is, because this releases a whole amount of energy which goes into resisting what is. Can we just allow? We don't have favorites. We don't favor certain thought or feeling or physical sensation over another. We just welcome. Then you might want to take just 1 or 2 breaths, not worrying about taking a particular kind of breath, just a nice big sigh. And if it feels good, you can do it again. Just that surrender out breath, not controlling it at all. And then taking your attention to where in the body feels good right now. Even if it's only a toenail or an eyelash or an earlobe. Even if the rest of the body is full of groans and grumbles. Where feels good right now? Or nourishing? Or peaceful? Or another word. And just rest in that part of the body. And if thoughts come up, or feelings, emotions, or sensations, you can welcome them and then go back to bathing in this part that feels so good. And if you're having a day when nothing feels good, and that happens sometimes, then find a place that feels neutral, just bathing in the neutralness or in what feels good. And this is an exercise you could just spend as much time or as little in as you like, depending on how much time you've got. And when you feel it's time to come out of this, you're going to stay in contact with what feels good. Just stay with that as the eyes gently open. Can you stay in contact with feels good as you look around? What would it be like to go through your day, to go through your life, anchored into whichever part of you feels good, which may change every time you do this exercise or may stay the same? Because this part that feels good, that's always there, there's always this resourced, balanced, nourishing place within you. Just that we're so often distracted by other parts of the body that aren't. But when you tap into this, it's tapping into your blueprint, your true self, and the self which will heal you and can then also help you be of more support to others. So staying in this place as you go about your day.
Thank you. Barbara, I was trying to bring my voice back from that deep place within myself. Thank you for that exercise. Short, but very, very meaningful, that I can actually feel it myself. So I hope that will also touch many of the people that are listening today. And also want to remind them that if you feel there are useful information in this episode for you, please help us to help and share it with others, with your colleagues, with your friends, anybody that you think may benefit, that is working in the front line, that may benefit from getting to know more about self-care and build up their own self-care strategy, which is so essential. Barbara, thank you so very much for today. I really appreciate our conversation, and definitely will be in my list of positive things for today.
Mine too.
Thank you so very much. Bye-bye.